Hey everyone, welcome to the Beyond Extent podcast, a podcast dedicated to a chat between two environment artists discussing everything about the industry we work in. I'm Timothy and I'm joined by William, who is a friend and fellow colleague of mine. In this episode, we talk about one of the questions that was asked by our Patreon community and turn it into a main discussion topic, which is going to be all about the final steps of the project. We're going to be talking about motivation to finish a project, lighting, post-processing, presentation, and lastly, we'll be doing a deeper dive into references and how to structure them. So really important stuff for people who struggle with finishing a project or are currently going through a motivational dip. So, let's dive straight in. Hey yo everyone! This is episode 16 of the podcast, and I don't know why I do this intro twice, but I'm just gonna roll with it. Hey William! How you doing, man?
Hello. I'm good. I'm, my 9-day vacation or holiday, whatever you want to call it, started today.
Oh,
So
damn!
I'm very happy.
Mm-hmm.
Looking forward to sweating on my own time.
Yeah, it's probably still gonna be hot this entire week.
Yup.
Yeah,
Very
man,
much so.
I'm so glad we have an aircon. Like that's probably the best purchase in the last year that I did.
Right. Yeah, we were talking about you giving me your old one, right? But then I
Yeah,
was like,
even
I
on this
don't think.
podcast, if you want to hear
Yeah.
all about that, you can go back to episode what was it, 12?
I don't know. Yeah, I was like, and then in the end, I said like, I think the hot wave is over. I think I won't need it.
Oh, you were terribly mistaken, young man.
Yes, I was, but it's fine. I've got my little fan working hard.
Yeah,
It's trying to keep me cool. And now I've got a working fridge, so I can have cold drinks, which is nice.
Yeah.
Because my fridge wasn't working. Because that's the thing that happens.
Yeah, like everything's just gone to shit.
Literally, my apartment was so broken. My intercom still doesn't work, but it's going to be fixed. It's so old that the guy who came over to repair it just looked at it, and like he was scheduled to be there for like half an hour to fix it, and he just looked at it and he took it off the wall. He's like, yeah, this is so old, nobody has like parts to repair this, we're just gonna give you a new one. I was like, okay, cool. And then the fridge, apparently it wasn't installed the right way, so it was like a little bit crooked. Like it's part of like a built-in kitchen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was moved a little bit back, so when you close the door, it wouldn't ever like fully close.
Yeah.
So that it was always a little bit open, and then it would just freeze over, and then it would melt, like the ice would melt all over my stuff, and it would go bad. It was
Great.
stupid. And then I didn't have hot water for a week, but now it's all good.
Yeah, that sounds lovely, man. Takes me back to my days in Cambridge. Everything was just going kaput.
Yeah, but now I feel like a person. It's nice.
Welcome back to the land of the living, man.
Yeah. So stupid when you like talk about it like this. There's so much shit going on.
Yeah, you just realize how what's the word?
Or like
Privilege?
it's just I guess yeah. You just
Kind of is like, oh, my fridge is broken, like my life is gonna end.
Yeah, man. I had to pay so much money for takeout. Jesus.
Yeah, I promise people, this is not the only thing that we're going to be talking about today. We're actually going to talk about some interesting stuff. So
Really? I have like another hour of fridge material.
Oh man, like if you want to talk about broken stuff, we can talk about our time that we lived in Cambridge too.
All right. What have you got planned, my man?
But yeah, we were talking about this before, right? Like we had a question prepared before, but then we decided to turn it into a topic unto itself. And it was
Yeah.
a question by Ben Black that was basically all about discussing the final polish or the last 10% of a project.
Right.
And I feel that this is a big topic with a lot of people because there's so much
included.
going on, right? Like you've done all the texturing, the build-up of your props, like everything's sort of done, but now everything needs to come together and needs to be presented in a way, well, in most cases that will get you a job.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead.
It's definitely a topic that I think a lot of people are struggling with me included,
Mm-hmm.
because it can. I mean, it's such a cliche thing, but it is true. Is that the last 20% of the project take up 80% of the time,
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
or 80% of the effort, I guess. And it's definitely true. If I just think about the environments that I've worked on, it's a lot of them have failed at like a point where it was already nice to look at. I already had some good props, a lot of cool stuff all over the place. But it just takes so much effort to get it to that next level, get that composition, that lighting, and also with me, a lot of the time it's, or I think from what I've heard with a lot of people, it's just that you lose interest in your project.
Mm-hmm.
The more you work on it, like if you're working on something for a couple months, sometimes you'll be distracted by like, oh, but I want to do this too. I want to start a new project.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think
Which,
that's a good topic to dive in first, and maybe talk about our own experiences with just like the loss of motivation, especially when you're like deep into a project, like you said.
yeah.
Is there anything that helps you when you're at that stage where you're like, oh, I don't know, should I jump on something else because I'm kind of tired of doing this?
So what usually happens for me is that I don't get like actively tired of something, but it's more that I find something new that interests me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've been working on this one environment for a very long time, and I really like it, and I really want to finish it. But then at the same time, I'm like, I kind of want to do like a really realistic gun again, because that was like the last big project that I worked on. It was super fun,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
now playing Tarkov, you've got all these cool guns that you can like put all these cool attachments onto, and like, maybe I want to make like a gun again, and then but I can't decide which one,
Mm-hmm.
because like all of the guns are already like there's already thousands of them on ArtStation.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
why I decided to make the Winchester 1895 last time, because it's like there was only like two of them on ArtStation, and they were both like not like really realistic and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it was like a cool standout gun, and I don't just want to make something that I feel like someone else had already done maybe a better job at.
Yeah.
Or
Or you have to go the other route where you do it so over the top, like your what's it called,
yes,
super tactical sawn-off shotgun that you made.
yeah. Exactly, it needs something to like stand out, to be interesting to people, right? If
Mm-hmm.
it's just another AK,
Yeah.
people
So
have seen
so
them.
yeah, let's talk about that distraction, because that is something that I'm super aware of with my stuff.
Mm.
And I tend to even go so far that I know that there's like this new game on the horizon that I really want to play, but I know that if I'm going to play it, it's going to be so inspiring that I want to switch to like
Yes,
a project that's basically all around that.
right.
So I tend not to play the game, really. Like I just tend to be like, look, this is going to be a distraction, and I just make the choice of like not playing it until I get in the mood for like a new project and like the last project is finished.
You crazy man, you.
Yeah, I know. I'm super strict when it comes to that stuff, but then it's like, yeah, I don't know. Like I'm doing so much other stuff now that I
Right.
can't really. It's how would you call it? Like a sunk cost fallacy. Like I'm so deep into this project that giving it up now would
Mm.
cost me so much time that it's better for me to make like these little sacrifices and just keep going with the project whenever I have time to work on it.
I think it's worth it to stick with your projects. Like that's the thing. I know that if I'm gonna finish, well, actually, let's say when I'm gonna finish, because I really want to finish this project. I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
be so happy with it, because it's a really cool project. I've got like a really good base for it now. I just need to, finish up some stuff. And it's gonna be a really cool project that I'm gonna be really proud of. Um, but yeah, at the same time, we talked about this before, right? I don't want to force myself to do personal work.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a rule that I have, because that's not what it's about for me.
Yep.
Like especially because I don't have this pressure to get a job, to like, it's not like, I have to do this, get this done so I can apply for a job.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm like in a good status quo. So
Yeah, that's a big part of this, right? Like
yeah,
it's so personal as well. Like
Yes.
the stuff that I'm saying might be worth trying if you don't really know what you're how would I say it, like what's wrong with what you're doing. Like maybe what's wrong is like the wrong wording. But if you feel like you're getting stuck or like easily distracted, it might be worth trying not buying the next game that might inspire you.
Yeah.
But then I do know that it's like a draconian matter. Like you look forward to a game for like a couple of months and then you're not gonna play it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like that's
And
that's
then
kind of ridiculous because I've probably missed out on like a lot of games like in this way.
yeah, and then also sometimes, like you said, a game like I don't know what. I don't know. When I was playing Red Dead Redemption, I was like, "Oh, maybe I should make another Winchester," just because all these Wild West guns are so cool. Um, but then sometimes where I was like playing a game that had nothing to do with what I was working on, but just like one little thing where I was like, "Oh, the way they did the texture blending here looks really interesting. Like
Yeah.
this is a really cool thing that they were doing here." And then I would take what I had seen, like the inspiration from a game, and I would use it on my personal project that had nothing to do with the game. You know, so sometimes it can still give you that little boost to be like,
Yep.
hey, so it can still be helpful in some ways too to play some games and just like get your mind off of it. And then like I've had times where I was like, oh, I'm just gonna play some games today, and then I played something for half an hour, and then I saw one little thing, and I was like, ah,
Yeah, you get
actually,
that spark and you wanna start working
yeah,
again.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And that's where I'm sort of hesitant of like saying it to other people or like, oh, you have to do this in this way because it doesn't work like that. You kind of have to find your own rhythm. And
Yeah,
like I'm at this stage now, but I'm constantly trying out new stuff too, where I might buy like a new game and even play it when I know that's gonna inspire me just for the bits that you just talked about. It might
yeah,
not be like Red Dead Redemption, for example. Like it might not inspire me to do like a full Western scene, but it might give me like ideas for like texture blending, like you said.
yeah. Yeah, I think it's like you said, it can be a double-edged sword, right? It can go either way. But I think what's the most important thing is to keep your vision in your head, like to be aware of what you're trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it can even make sense to be like, this was my original vision, but it might make sense to cut it down a little bit. Like to be like, okay, I was gonna do a scene with 3 buildings and 2 cars. Let's just do 2 buildings and 1 car for now. I'll
Mm-hmm.
see where how it looks when I end up, when I finish that. And then if I still want to work on this, I can add more stuff. But
Yeah.
like setting your goals a little bit lower.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this, and I wrote like a weekly tip about it like 2 weeks ago, where I
Right.
I kind of talk about those points as like save points.
Yeah.
Like you would kind of see your environment and like finish a section of it that can still stand on its own, and you
Yes.
can you can call that a save point. And then if you from that point you still want to work on your project, then you can go to the next save point and work your way to that. But
Yeah.
then you don't have this like massive scene that is like one camera angle and you have to finish everything. And
Hmm.
yeah, if you don't finish everything, then you kind of lose that entire scene. That's not what you want. You want to have like small compartmentalized sections that you can work on, finish really properly to like a final quality, and then maybe move on to the next thing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Yeah,
Having
because
having like a artificial point where okay, now I've got something already. Everything after this is just bonus.
hmm
If I can get it done, amazing. If not, I can just pump this out and be like, okay, this is done.
yeah, exactly. Um, but yeah, like this didn't really answer our first question, and
Yes, yeah.
it's a question that I still struggle with myself too, because like I kind of know what works for me, like just planning it out and like setting goals. Like it doesn't have to be like a really robust plan, but it just has to be like a goal that I'm working towards, and that usually motivates me to finish the project.
Hmm.
But thinking back to the art station challenge that I did, like the Lost and Found Civilizations,
Mm-hmm.
I think I spent like half of my time just like working on lighting, presentation, trying to
Yeah.
add some tiny fill light here to put some extra focal point on this element. And I went through like a ton of iterations on just lighting and presentation. Just that alone, that aspect is what a lot of environment artists tend to forget or like tend to deep dive into.
Yeah.
And if we're going to be totally honest about it, like it can destroy your work.
Yeah. It can. It definitely can. If you're too like, if you have like tunnel vision, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's sort of like you have your entire scene and then you put in some quick lights and some quick post processing and it doesn't really look good. Then you basically destroy all the work that you did inside of the modeling and the texturing stage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're like rushing to the point. Your only goal is getting it done. You get this like, oh, okay, so I just need to like you have this checklist, but you're not like you've got like, okay, I need to put some kind of light in there. I need to do some kind of camera angle, and then I'm done.
Yeah,
And you get like this tunnel vision on the finish line, and you're like, okay, gotta turn this out.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, like I'm really particular about how I render my stuff. Like I've got like my guns or even my environments. I have like specific way of how I like to do them and do the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And because I found the way for me that I like to like how I like presenting my stuff, and I'm really happy with that. And I go through that process every time to make sure that it's like a good quality overall. Because yeah, I've seen so many really cool guns that are just ruined. Like I'm talking about guns specifically here because I think it's really easy to see on those.
Yeah. Because they're like small compartmentalized items that you're trying to show off.
Exactly, yeah. Like even a friend of mine, I remember telling him like, yeah, your texturing is good, your modeling is pretty good, but this whole thing looks like really amateurish just because the presentation is very sloppy.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, like no one's ever going to see it if they see the thumbnail and it doesn't look enticing. So you've got to make sure that you sometimes literally put your work into the right light, right? It's so important to have something that looks aesthetically pleasing, and it's not like you can only appreciate it if you like zoom in and see, oh, this is a really good bake. Ooh, then maybe you've got a screenshot of the UVs. Oh, these UVs are really nice. Like nobody's gonna look at that if the presentation of the thing itself doesn't look right and nice.
Yeah. It's all about that initial second of like grabbing your attention and then funneling you to the breakdown of the piece itself.
Yeah,
and it's the same on environments. Like I see a lot of people that work a long time on like all the aspects and then don't go through the same sort of workflow with their lighting, because in environments you have like the block out, and then you refine the block outs, you start adding models, you start adding details, and then you go to like a polish phase. But then during all those phases, like the lighting barely changes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people need to start thinking about doing the same thing for the lighting as well. Just starting with like this is kind of the mood that I want. Just throw it in there quick, get like a quick composition and block out done, and then after a while start really digging into the specific aspects, like what colors do you want in the shadows, like what is the kind of contrast that you want to hit with this scene, where maybe you want to add some fake fog in the background to work with like the different layers of the environment, or maybe some fake God rays in there to like really subtly point at the focal point that you want to add to your scene.
Yeah.
Like there's so much that you can do with all that stuff, and I think a lot of people, I'm not gonna blame them for not knowing them, because it's also something that not a lot of people talk about. I feel like there's like a lack of information when it comes to just like pure lighting, and a lot of it still comes from photography.
Right. I'm really not a lighting artist. I'm not good at it, I would say, just because in my job you never have to do lighting when you're
for sure. I'm not a lighting artist either, so
yeah. So it's really important to like get some get all the additional information that you can for that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I messaged some lighting artists about it and was like, hey, can you help me out with this? And it's yeah, like you really have to, because it's essentially it's a completely different job.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're working on it, you have to be aware that it's not a thing that you can just like do at the end, finish up quickly, and you'll be fine. You will literally have to like dive into a whole new set of skills and a whole new pool of knowledge, more or less, to like understand that, oh, lighting is not just putting a thing here and then a rim light there and then I'm good. So it's really important that you understand like this. Usually there's a specific person who does all of this, so there's got to be something to this. I should definitely see like put some work into this.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a good point that you brought up. It's just if you're not sure about the different aspects or like lighting by itself, just talk to some other people that are lighting artists and have their opinion, like specifically about lighting.
Yeah, watch a lighting tutorial that is made for people that want to become lighting artists. But you can still use that, right? You can get all the basic information from there that you need, and have like at least some basic knowledge of what it means to light a scene, and then you can. That's usually enough. Like I'm like I said, I'm not a lighting artist, but I have had some stuff on my portfolio where obviously I needed to have some knowledge of lighting. So that's what I did. I watched some tutorials to understand the theory behind it, and then I talked to someone who knows how the lighting in Unreal works, and got some of their feedback, and was like, hey, what's the best way to do this kind of thing? And then that can already be enough, like, of course you want to put as much work in there as possible, but then you also want to finish it. Like, it's the same thing, right? So you have to make sure that you get to a point where you can say, okay, this is I'm not rushing this out, but I'm also not spending all the time on this and it's never going to get finished. Like, this is good enough. And yeah, I'm sure there's definitely a lot of stuff that you could do better lighting wise on my scenes, but it's at a point where it's enough to show all the actual stuff that I want to show off, like my props and my materials, right?
Yeah, exactly. As long as it shows off like all the aspects that you want to get a job for. You're not trying to get a job as a lighting artist. You
No.
want to get a job as like a weapon artist or environment artist, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think a lot of my personal inspiration comes from photography. Like whenever we go on a trip, I have like an old school DSLR camera that I got from my parents, like I don't know, like a couple of years back. But it's just so nice to look for compositions in the wild. Like it sort of sounds weird, but like for an environment artist, I don't think there's anything better you can do. Obviously, you need to balance that on your vacation trips when you're going with your girlfriend. You need to you need to spend some time off the camera too. But I really enjoy it. Like just walking through streets and being like, oh, that's an interesting looking detail over there, and just grab like a couple of screenshots from it. Like
Screenshots.
Real life screenshot.
Real IRL screenshots, yeah. But yeah, I know what you mean. It's just like, instead of making a mental note, making a literal note and getting a picture of something is so worth it.
Yeah, it's also because like if when we go on vacation, like we tend to see like a lot of locations that are like really unique, and there's so much you can see on like a little trip that you tend to forget about that stuff. So
Yeah.
From all of our trips, I have like, I don't know, 10 to 20,000 pictures, I think.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I used to go crazy. Like even when I was 16 and going on holiday with my parents, I would just take like, I don't know, 2K pictures from like one trip that was like 5 days or something like that.
Oh fucking hell.
Yeah, but I think that really helped me look at compositions and look at interesting detail and like color contrast and color usage, and there's so much that you can get out of photography.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome. Yeah.
yeah, I would definitely recommend like just picking it up. It can be anywhere. Like even if you think that you live in like the uh
Hmm.
what is it, like the
Hmm.
most bored section of your city, like there's still interesting stuff to see. You
Definitely.
just have to look for it. But yeah, let's go back. Like we discussed a little bit about lighting. How much time do you spend on post processing?
Huh. So what I do usually is because I usually work in Unreal or Marmoset.
Mm-hmm.
I I try to keep my scene pretty clean. Like I'll do a little bit if it's, and like what I'm saying is at least when I'm doing stuff in Marmoset, I like to doing I like to doing I like doing my post processing mostly in Photoshop, just
Yeah,
giving
yeah.
like a little final pass. But of course, in Unreal, when you're working with fog and stuff like that, you can't just do that in Photoshop. So, I like definitely giving it some time. I like playing with the contrast and all that stuff, and with the what's it called, the tone mapper.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and trying out some different ambient occlusion, maybe adding in some little stuff like atmospheric fog or stuff like that. And it sometimes that's actually what you need to like, it can inspire yourself so much when you're like, oh, let's just plop in this fog and see how it looks, and then it can completely change the mood of your scene, which can be a good thing or a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
And some like it can do so much. Like if you're not happy with how vibrant or contrasted your textures are, it's a quick fix. It might be better to go into all the textures and fix them, but that would take so much time. It's just like playing a little bit with the exposure and some like the tone mapper, let's say, and then you'll have a little bit more of what you were looking for originally in your scene. It's like it can be like this shortcut sometimes to get some fixes done, but it can also be used for like to set a mood, right? It can completely change the look of a scene, the way
Yep.
you put post processing on it, especially if you did like you also go into lighting and you change the temperature of the light a little bit, then it's completely a different scene sometimes, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think a good inspiration point for this is also looking at movies and seeing how they do stuff, and like how they use post processing in a way where it can elevate the mood itself.
Yeah.
Like you often see this with like, oh, this is like a really sad scene, so they go more into the blue tones. Like this is obviously like an oversimplification, but
Yeah.
it's like that kind of stuff does matter, even though if you're not looking for it, it might not be that obvious.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, a thing that I love using in Unreal is the color lookup table. I don't know if you've used that before.
I think I think so, but not like as I don't know a lot about it. So
Because basically, what it allows you to do is you can go to like Unreal Engine color lookup table, and it will bring up a page where you can download like a little strip.
yes, with
Like
all the
it's-
colors.
Yeah, it's like a little tiny texture, and what you then do is you take a screenshot of your work, put it into Photoshop, add that little strip as like a layer on top of it, and then do all your adjustments. And if you then take that strip back into Unreal, it will mimic the changes that you
That
did in
color
Photoshop
palette.
and bring them into Unreal as post processing.
Yeah, I think I took like, can't you like take a screenshot of a movie and get like their colors that they use and then kind of convert them and use them in your, you know what I mean?
Oh, I haven't tried that.
Yeah,
That
I
would
think
be
that's
cool.
what I did. I think that's what I did with one of my scenes. Yeah,
Oh, damn. So it's like reverse engineering it.
kind of like if you're like I like what I have right now, but I'd like to get a little bit more of this look. Then you can get like a scene from whatever. Get like you can. I saw a video tutorial on how to do this. Like you can like really pixelate the picture that you got from that let's say like movie,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can like make your own color strip, and you can then replace the one, and it's quite interesting.
Oh damn.
Maybe I'm pretty sure it's using that. Maybe it's using something else. Maybe it's not that the color. What's it called?
Like the color lookup table.
Color look. Yeah, maybe it's a little bit of a different thing, but I think that's what it is.
Oh man, that would be awesome. I need to look into that then. But yeah, I think that you can go really deep into those things, but
Yeah.
it's again, it's the same point as lighting. Like you're not trying to go crazy, but it's really nice to experiment with it and then see if it inspires you to basically elevate the scene in a different way maybe. I would say
And it's all the stuff that you learn doing that, it's gonna help you down the road, right?
oh yeah, for sure. I would say that most, like, if you really want to prepare a scene from scratch, you should kind of have a mood idea in the beginning of your scene and like kind of have it planned out. It doesn't have to be 100% set in stone, but it would be good to have that from the beginning so that you don't have to struggle with like finding the right mood at the end of it. But
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier, right? Is having that vision is such an
Yeah.
important step.
Yeah,
But I've had projects where I was like, I had the mood in mind the whole time. I was like, okay, this is what I'm going for. And then, like I said, I was playing with the post processing. I was like, maybe I could change this a little bit, and I can actually turn the mood like just not a full 180, but like, like a 30-degree turn. Get a little bit more of like this spooky vibe in it, or a little bit more of this cozy, warm feeling, and completely changed. Like I had this basement scene where it was originally like way too overscoped with the hole in the wall, and I talked about this before, with like people digging a tunnel to like rob a bank or some stupid stuff like that, and it was too much. And then in the end, I was like, oh, I'm just gonna make a normal basement of like an American family. So I changed up the lighting. I made everything a little bit warmer. I went into the tone mapper, made everything a little bit more yellow instead of more blue, and it made it look like a cozy little basement instead of this cold, wet basement where some thugs live that are like digging a tunnel to do some kind of crime. So like, of course, you shouldn't make these decisions willy-nilly at the end of your project and then destroy all the vision you've had the whole time. But especially if you're thinking about changing something up anyways, that can be a quick way to at least change it up mood-wise and get like a quick preview of what you can... Like you should still... Like that's not all you should do. You should then maybe take a look at the rest of your scene and see if you can make it fit that. But it's... I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's also like usually when you're working on a scene, there's so much that you're trying to get right or like trying to balance in your head. Because now we're just talking about this one aspect, right? Like mostly focused on lighting and post-processing. But then what I also see with people is that once you get closer to like, oh, it's almost finished, that's where the fear sets in of like, when do I stop working on this? Or like, when do I post it? Like, when is it enough? When is it going to be fully finished in my head? Like you have all those questions playing in your head. And definitely in my head too. Like I think everyone has it. And I don't know, is there a way for you where you really know when a project is finished? Is there like a set what do you call it? Like a set goal that you reach?
I think for me it's that's where that initial vision comes in again. I have a picture in my head of what I want to achieve, and if I'm like 90% there, because you're never going to reach what you have in your head, right? It's always or at least usually, you've got all these ideas that you want to do, but some of them just can't because of time.
Yeah.
Then I'll be like, okay, I think it might be time to wrap this one up, and then I'll take a look. I'll just do like one more pass on everything to see if there's anything that like maybe is not up to the standard of the rest of the scene. I'm gonna try to go over that, maybe fix that here and there. Just like go over all the like just and then just like look at the camera angles that you have or that you want to have, and just think of, do I actually need to put in the time to fix this because it's never going to be seen that close up, thinking about the presentation that you're going to have.
Yeah. Man, that is such a good point. Sorry to interrupt there, but I feel like a lot of people tend to forget that we're basing everything on the camera. Like they spend so much time cleaning up this detail on like the backside of this asset, and you're never gonna see it. Never.
Yeah.
Like there's no camera angle. It's facing against the wall. Like you're never gonna see it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's a bit different when you're working on a game because people can walk around in it. Still, some stuff you're almost never gonna see. But if you're working on a personal project for ArtStation, there's literally stuff that no one will ever see because it's, like you said, it's not looking at the camera, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and also for bigger projects, it's good that you mentioned that. Like for bigger game projects, like you're probably, if you're working for like the bigger companies, then you create an asset and you think it might be used this way, but then other people might use it in a way that you weren't expecting it.
Yeah, like it's, this box is now tipped over, so like a lot of people don't put like a bottom on their stuff at the start.
Yeah.
Because they're like, it's always going to be on the ground, which could be true if you're working on a personal project. But if you're working on a big game, that's why usually you don't have like rocks that are just one half of a rock that you put in the ground. Mm-hmm. Because even though it might be better for performance if you just have this one rock that's a full rock and you can turn it around and put the other side into the ground.
Yeah,
it actually will be better in the end for performance because you might have more polys, but you're only using one mesh instead of 5 different ones.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also going to look less repetitive because you can rotate this rock so many ways instead of just having this one piece of rock come out of the ground. It's really important to think about reusability, especially in a game context.
Yeah.
But even if you're working on your personal project, there's definitely like on my little fantasy town that I did ages ago, I ended up like not modeling some props because I was like, I can just put this hammer that I did in the wall and it'll look like something that I can hang. Like I hung up like a cartwheel on the side of a building because I saw that in a reference somewhere, and I was like, I could model a hook, or I can just take this hammer that I did and just put it into the wall, and it's gonna be fine. Like literally, we're like, I made some stones, and I've got this cross that I need to do on the top of the church, and I just took the stones and I scaled them, and it was a horrible texture. Stretching, but it's up on the top of the church. No one's ever going to see. So all you need is 2 stones that are crossed. So it's all good.
Yeah, exactly. Like
I think you can save time.
Yeah, I think when people start free flying through like game environments of games, people are going to be surprised in what ways assets are used.
Yeah, wasn't there this famous example of Skyrim where they used this one cabinet that they just put underground and then they use it as like a little bench or like a table?
I haven't seen that. I heard like the Fallout 4 was it Fallout 4 or Fallout 3? I think Fallout 3, where they had like a train system and they had the train attached to a guy's head and then just had it like they weren't simulating like the train riding a track. It was just like a guy running with like his head was the train cart.
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
and he was basically running on a duplicate of the world that was set like 2 meters lower or something. Like it was some crazy stuff like that.
Yeah. It doesn't have anything to do with what we're talking about, but it's a cool detail like that. In I think some old Tony Hawk Pro Skater game, they didn't have the technology to have real-time reflections.
Mm-hmm.
So what they did is it was like an airport or a mall or something, and they just copied the complete level. They just completely copied the whole thing, and they mirrored it on the z-axis.
Yep.
And then they took the floor of that you were like skating on, and they put it to like 70% opacity.
Yep.
So it looks like it's a reflection of everything around you, but it's literally just the level again, and you see it through a transparent floor, which I don't know how that can make sense. Like, because now I would think, wow, you've got so much alpha overdraw and you've got like so many extra polys, but I guess it's cheaper. It was cheaper at that time to have like to do that instead of reflections.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty.
Yeah, that's so funny, man. We talked about that yesterday in the community as well. We're just talking about these weird hacks in video games, and I think they did it in Silent Hills too, where if you go into like a bathroom, like they do the exact same thing. Like it's just
with
like
the mirror.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like the geometry is just duplicated and like mirrored, and that's it.
Yeah, that's just, it's so funny.
But yeah, let's take us back to the vision part, because I think that's something that's really interesting to people, and I'm kind of curious. Like, do you just have this vision in your head and you just stick to that, or is it like something that's coupled together with like a mood board?
Yeah, so I have this vision in my head usually, and then I try to get as many reference images, maybe do an overpaint. Usually I don't, because I'm really not a concept artist that way. But yeah, just like it's that's what concept is all about, right? Having a vision in your head and then finding some way to communicate it to people. And just usually the easiest way to do it is through concept art. But then, of course, if you work on a personal project, you don't have that responsibility to communicate it to anyone, because you're the one doing everything.
Yeah.
But I think there's definitely still merit to making a mood board, making getting like a PureF file with 1,000 images in it, just so you down the line you don't forget what your initial vision is, because that image in your mind can fade or can morph to something new, and it's definitely important to keep that vision from the start.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to bring up too, because we started out this conversation talking about like the final 10% of the project, but if you get to that stage and you haven't planned it out in such a manner, then you're gonna get lost at this stage, because that's where again
a lot of
to
decisions are made.
Yeah, and also like the fear that I brought up earlier. It's like, oh, but I had this original idea, and like, what if this idea is weaker? Like, all of those questions start to pick up, and you start to self-doubt a little bit, especially if you're still trying to get into the industry.
Yeah.
Because to add on to that is also the amount of references that you have is also important, because I feel that some people don't really talk about that, where sometimes the amount of references that you have can also be confusing, because you're picking from
that you
so
can have
many.
too much?
Yeah, because you have so many things on your reference board that for people trying to get started with all this stuff, like, it might dilute the vision that you have, or be like, oh, which one do I combine with which one? So it might be easier for those people to stick with a certain
One
selection.
concept. Yeah, that's why when I try to do like a PureF file or just like a mood board, I try to be specific about my references. So I don't just put 1,000 images in a folder, or let's say 50 images in a folder. What I do is I try to separate them. So it's like, it's not, I don't put, like, I'm working on the scene of Tokyo, right? So I've got these images, and I don't just put all of them in one folder. What I do is, it's like, this is a cool ground texture. This is a cool detail with this vending machine. This is an interesting, this is just a cool building that has some cool architecture. So that way, when I'm looking at it a month later, I'm not gonna be overwhelmed with all the reference, and like you said, like, be like, oh, what do I mix with what? There's too much. But I can be like, okay, I can cherry pick, and I can be like, okay, I want this wall texture, I want this graffiti, I want this ad, I want this architectural detail, I want this cool car, and then I can literally like pick and choose everything
That's a really
already
good way
like
of doing it. Yeah.
yeah.
Because I was about to say something that goes into the same vein, but it seems to me that you're even a little bit more detail oriented with that. Because the way that I usually do it is I have like these categories. Like this is for the mood, this is for modeling, this is for texture reference. Like I just have like 4 or 5 categories, and I just dump everything in there. But then yeah, like it brings up the thing that if you're working on something for so long and you have maybe like for instance, if we talk about my scene, you have like a break for a month, and then you come back to your reference sheet and it's like, okay, I know that I wanted to have something from this category that's all about texturing, but I don't see why this picture is relevant anymore.
Yeah.
So then when you start adding comments like you would do, that immediately gets rid of that confusion there. So that's
Yeah.
actually a pretty good one.
I think that's something that I learned at outsourcing, because we used to make these ref sheets, right? So you would either get the ref sheet, or sometimes you would make them yourselves and send them to the client.
Oh, cool.
So you have like a page where it's like this one prop, and you have it separated into, this is for texturing, this is for detail, this is for general shape. Like, let's say you're making what's like a classic prop, a fire hydrant, right? It's like one of the classic
Oh god,
props.
yeah.
So it would be like, okay, I want this type of fire hydrant, like the classic American one. Then for details, I want to have that little chain, that connects the thing with the like the plug thing on the side.
Mm-hmm.
And then I want to have a little bit of grass, like a little bit of like weeds growing out of the side of the like where the base is,
And what the amount of wear and tear is on the object.
Exactly. Then you just have like pictures for material references, like, okay, I want rough painted metal that's like a little bit rusty and it's got this kind of surface wear on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got like a separate picture of just the branding, the little marking that I want on it. And then I have like in the detail section, I've got like an image of just some welding. It doesn't even have to be the type of welding I want. Just so I know that, okay, so for this I want welding, I want this chain, I want this type of wear and tear. And then for material, I want red, I want painted metal, I want rough worn surface.
Mm-hmm.
And for general shape, I want this type of hydrant with this type of thing, and then it becomes much clearer what you're going for.
Yeah, because you're basically sending off that reference sheet, and the other person, where you might have no contact with whatsoever, just needs to instantly understand what you're trying to achieve here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that's why I think it's best to go from these. Like I said, it doesn't even have to be the picture of a welding on a fire hydrant. It can just be any welding, but it gets the point across.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually another good point. I know that we're talking a lot about just finding references here, and
it's so important though.
Yeah, kind of
if you've got
deviating from
good
the original point,
references-
but
Yeah, but if you've got good references, these last 10% are going to be much easier, right? It's like a lot of the work of these 10%, the 10 last percent, is done before that. Because if you set everything up correctly and you do all the work beforehand in a good structured way, then you're going to have a much easier time, I would say, with these last 10%.
Yeah. So I kind of thought about this question now, because right now it's normally the time for the Patreon question, of course, but it's kind of a different one for this episode.
Because we already did the Patreon question, kind of.
Yeah, kind of. So I wanna throw this in as my question, so we can kind of
Okay.
work around it that way. Because I see a lot of people having this conversation about using game screenshots as reference. So I think it would be interesting to just tie it in with this conversation that we're having right now, and just have a conversation about if you should use game art screenshots for references for your models.
So, for me, I'd say in general, you can definitely do it. But you've got to be careful. You've got to be specific about it. Again, it's just the same thing, right? It's just if you take a screenshot from a game, don't just put the screenshot in your folder without any comment and be like, okay, like, because then it might seem like, oh, I'm just gonna copy this and then I'm gonna have achieved my goal. It's more like, okay, I really like the way that they lit this area. The mood in here is really cool, or this wood texture, or the way that they, like, I remember seeing something that is it's such a basic technique, but it's so effective. I saw it on a Dishonored 2 screenshot on ArtStation. Is like having a tileable, like I think they had just like a tiled kitchen floor, but then modeling around that tiled kitchen floor, right? Like cutting out one of the tiles and putting it off to the side a little bit, as if it like, you know, it broke out of the thing.
Broken, yeah.
And then, or like it's just being constructed. So there's like a couple of tiles off to the side, and then one of the tiles might have not been like fully placed yet, so it's like half there. Like it's a really basic technique, right? So what I would just do then is just have a screenshot of this and like mark out, oh, I want to do this to give a little bit more detail to my scene. Like
because again, that's the thing. Like that would be my main point to this question as well, is I tend to look at game art screenshots just for interesting techniques. I wouldn't really use them for like super accurate references of like, okay, this building is built in this way, because then it's better to look at the real thing.
Oh yes, definitely, yeah. And don't use it as real life reference, because that's just playing. What's the English name of it? Where you whisper in each other's ear.
Oh,
you go all around.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like you're basically diluting it over and over. Yeah.
Telephone.
Oh yeah, that's it.
So yeah, you're playing telephone with references, because what you're looking at is the interpretation of reference by someone else, and they already made some, or probably made some kind of compromise, because they had their own technical limitations or their own budget to work with, and their own ideas, and then you're just playing telephone with that. But you can use it, I'd say, for like specific techniques, like you said, or mood sometimes, like you've got like or style, I guess. If you're looking at like I don't know, Breath of the Wild, and you've got a screenshot like, oh, this is the kind of texturing look that I want to achieve.
But that also goes somewhat into the technical realm as well, because then you're looking at how they achieve that kind of style, what they're using for shadows and so I would think that if you're building anything from scratch, it's always good to rely on real life resources.
Yes, and 100%.
Yeah, don't also stick with reference pictures. Just look up documentaries, see how they build that stuff in real life, and because there's so much that you can gain from just watching a YouTube video about a guy constructing it.
Yeah, and another great reference source is Google Street View.
Oh yeah.
Because for my Tokyo scene, I have some reference for the style I want. I have some reference for the specific props, but then it can be hard sometimes to find exactly the kind of house that you want to model or whatever, this and that. So what I would just do is I would go to the part of Tokyo that I want to replicate, and just like take a virtual walk through the streets, right? And just see if I can find anything that I like, and then I'll just save the link of that position. And now I've got a couple of areas where I know, okay, this is the thing I'm going for. And then with what I'm doing, because I've got this stylized look, is that sometimes I'm pretty much just copying one house, but then I'm mixing and matching all the more interesting bits. So I'll be like, I really like this garage door, but I like the texture of this house more than this one. So I'll put this garage door on a house that has this texture, and then I'll make it just a little bit more colorful and a little bit more like worn, so the silhouette's more interesting, because that fits with the style I'm going for.
Yeah.
Like literally, like that's what it's all about for me with that, is this mixing and matching. Jesus, I cannot talk today. This mixing and matching procedure to get like all the most interesting parts from your real life reference, from your video game reference or from your photo reference, and then like
Mm-hmm.
putting it all together in one beautiful thing.
Yeah, this takes me back to the bit that I did about photography. It's because I can look at those photographs, and I think still the best way to get references is just being there. But obviously
Yeah,
you can't just like fly willy-nilly to Tokyo and just discover like a street and go back to your desk again.
especially now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
But yeah, like when you take those pictures, like there's so much more involvement with that scene because it takes me back to when we were there, and like the feeling and the mood and like the it might sound ridiculous, but like the smell of it and like the vibe of the place. There's so many things that you can pull interesting
energy.
references for.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yes, definitely. Yeah, that's if you've got that kind of personal connection with something that you're making, it's always going to be helpful because, like you said, it's going to take you back. You're going to have all the like. Essentially, what it is you're going to have a clearer vision, right? That's what it comes back to. It's just if you've seen it with your own eyes, you know exactly what that feels like. Because even stuff like Google Street View can't give you the full experience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but then on the other side, it does allow you for other cool stuff where you can go back in time on Google Street View and see like, oh, what was this street like? It's not available everywhere, but what was this street like I don't know, 10 years ago or something,
True.
and then extract some history from that. So yeah, I would definitely say limit yourself by focusing on the techniques if you're using game art references, and just see how they build stuff, see how they optimize it in a specific way, or how they I saw this screenshot from Half-Life Alyx where they had like a wooden planks, but they had like a stereotypical tileable sheet that was just like straight wooden planks, but they had a corner in their room, so they would cut out the UVs where they could like interlace like the edges of the wooden planks.
Nice.
So it's like it can be simple stuff like that where it's like, oh, I never thought about it that way, and then you can just implement that in your scene.
Oh, I try to do that as much as I can, using the texture to build the model, like modeling around what you already have in your texture. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I love doing that.
Oh, actually, I know that we're getting sort of like the round off time, but that is such a good way to end this podcast off. It's just talking about how you can still do adjustments to the models once you've done the texturing pass. There's so many moments where I was like, oh, this edge of this building is not looking worn enough, and you just cut in like a little bit of damaged piece that you textured in, and you just cut it out a little bit so that it elevates the silhouette of the piece.
That's something that it was like a eureka moment when I realized that when you've baked your prop, let's say, it doesn't mean that it's done. You can still, like, even sometimes through like rotating some pieces instead of making it a symmetry, you can completely hide the fact that you're reusing some texturing. You know, you're like overlapping UVs for something, because the way that you set it up then is you're never going to see the same side at the same time twice. So it's going to be, you know, you can hide some stuff, you can make it look more like you can have it seem like it has more variation than it actually has, or like you said, you can just go and change the silhouette. Like I've got a couple bikes that I made for my scene, and I, like, one of them I textured that it's like rusty and old, so I would, like, in that one I would add a couple edges and make everything bent out of shape a little bit, and then I just for another one I was like, oh, I guess I can just make this bike a little bit smaller, adjust the proportions, and make another texture variation in pink, and now I've got a little girl's bike. You know, like stuff like that is such an easy way of making the most out of your work.
Yeah, for sure. And it saves you so much time in the end. Like, you don't have to go back to scratch and start all over again. Like, there's so much reuse that you can build up over time. It's crazy.
Yeah. Or like, I saw that in Tokyo they had a lot of motorcycles that had tarps over them. I don't know if it just rains that much or if it's just like a general thing that they do. But I didn't want to model a motorcycle, but what I did is I took one of the bikes I made and I blew it up. I put like a push modifier on it and changed some of the proportions. And then I just went into Marvelous Designer and put a tarp over it. And then now I've got something that looks like a motorcycle without ever modeling a motorcycle, right? It's such an easy way to like cheat your way to get more stuff to fill your scene without actually putting in the time that you would usually need.
Oh man, that's such a great trick. Like there's so much interesting stuff that you can do with that.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. And on that note, talking about all these interesting tricks, we could keep talking about those, and I think we should add that to the list basically to just go over like some of the tricks that we did in our own personal scenes.
True.
But yeah, that's gonna end this podcast episode. It's number 16. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you all for listening. Not welcome.
you're This was episode number 16. You're welcome.
Yeah, let's end it like that. Thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Yeah. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. If you did, then you can check out the playlist on the right for more episodes, and don't forget to like, subscribe, or share it with friends. If you're an environment artist trying to break into the industry, or just looking to grow your skills, you can find a ton more resources like weekly tips, blog posts, and more on beyondextend.com. But that's going to do it from our side. Thanks so much for joining us, and a shout out to all of our Patreon supporters who made this possible.